everyone. My name is Dr. Hal Bradley. I would like to ask us, each and every one of you, that if you enjoyed these shows, please hit like, share, and subscribe after you view the show. Thank you very much.
Well, hello, world, and welcome to another episode of the Crisis Victory Show. My name is Dr. Hal Bradley. I'm executive producer and host of the show. And today I have an interesting guest, associate named Michael Klassen, also is a podcast host of the 5 a.m. podcast.com.
Yes.
You can see it on the screen. Now, this is kind of different with regard to a lot of the stories I do. As you know, the Crisis Victory Show is set up to establish people that have not only survived an extreme crisis event, but were able to pay it forward in a humanitarian scale after their survivorship of whatever they went through. In this case, Michael Klassen, he will start his interview talking about family at home. He'll go into relationships that he had with friends as a result of what he went through as a child, how he became ultimately a mediator, aiding and assisting other people. So in this sense, this is called paying it forward. Michael, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Hal. It's great to be with you today.
And you, sir. I'd like to get into the childhood, which started the foundation, if you will, of how you ultimately became a person that would bring others together through their traumas. Can we go into that?
Yeah. So I was the second oldest of 5 on this farm that we knew once we started interacting with our childhood friends that we got through school that we weren't as financially well off as what seemed like a lot of people, but yet I began to realize even there was a spectrum, because there was let's say farms, agrarian lifestyle farther out from the town where it kind of just got poorer and poorer. And one of, like you and I were talking before, my childhood memory actually starts with my parents not getting along. They stayed together for a long time, but it was a constant struggle between the two of them. And so then what that caused me as this older brother is trying to be the peacemaker. And like you said, the mediator of why can't we all get along? If I had known the phrase, let's settle this over a pint, I would have used it. But but it really, looking back now, I kind of feel like we're unclogging some wells, even in this conversation.
Yes.
Of that digging deep to say, like, wow, I had 2 parents that I knew that loved us as children, but that same knowledge was these 2 don't love each other. And so then you're kind of walking on eggshells as a child, and you're wondering when's the next shoe going to drop. And so you begin, I don't know, maybe you're hyper vigilant because you don't want anything to be said or to come up that's gonna light the torch and get the bonfire going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about experiencing that in the early childhood years, and this is the point where we start formulating an impressionistic path, if you will, that will determine the life that comes to us later in years. So that's significant. The other part that's interesting to me is you're the second of 5 children. So that puts you in an authoritative and protective relationship with your younger siblings. How was your older sibling with you with regard to that? Was that protective? Was that?
Oh, that's a great question, because I love my older brother Matthew dearly, of course, and we were always called the 2 oldest ones, and then there was the 3 younger ones, and so Matthew and I would fight a lot, but it was because we only had that modeled to us,
right?
And we wanted to be as thick as thieves, but yet ultimately he was, I would say he became this protector of all of us, all 4 of us. And then I was his wingman in perhaps I was the scout. I was going out to survey the scene and then report back of what was going on, and I, there'd be so many times my older brother and I would be like comparing notes and getting things going, and we lived on a farm. We were in a really small community, and so that was another component of my older brother and I having to work together, partly with our parents, but a lot of times ourselves of taking care of the chores while our parents were working.
Interesting. So how did this influence and impact the 3 younger siblings? Were you 2 more like the parental guidance to them in their early years, or Did the parents have a stronger influence on them in their upraising?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think the brother that came right after me, he and my dad have a very close bond
Okay.
through all of it. And um, so I think in those formative years, I would say the first 10 to 14 anyway, my older brother and I were very much that overarching, um, uh, not intimate, but connected relationship with our younger siblings. We were all pretty close. And I think it was because we had that shared experience.
Interesting. Very interesting. How is your relationship with your older brother today?
Oh, great. Yes. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got one. I got one to share with you on that.
Okay.
I too have an older brother, and what happened to us is we became estranged about 22 or 23 years ago.
Mm.
As you probably know through Pete Turner, my co-host,
Yeah.
I was an active participant in the Sinaloa drug cartel. After my military service, I went back to a village I had lived in as a child, and became connected to a cartel down there. Ultimately, spending 15 years of my life as a smuggler, later an international trafficker, later the primary target of Operation Northern Exposure, and later after that walked in. But what happened and what was significant, my older brother spent 23 years in the United States Marine Corps, a man of great honor, a man of dignity, a man that once he discovered what I was involved with and saw the direction I was going in life, totally separated from me. And we stayed separated for 20 years. And over that 20 years, we only reconnected 2 years ago. But unknown to my brother was during that 20 years, a few years into Leavenworth Federal Prison, I got pulled out of prison, became a contractor for the Department of Justice, and I spent 17 years undercover, operating in multiple foreign countries. I've been kidnapped, I've been captured and tortured, I've been through all kinds of things to right the wrongs of my life. And after 17 years, ending my career as a contractor in 2018, for weeks I got text messages, calls from federal agents that I had worked with, military personnel that I'd worked with outside the wire, saying, you paid your debt, you did it right, Hal, da 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 da. But what was interesting was during that 20 years of separation, my brother was totally unaware that I spent 17 years serving the Department of Justice and going out there outside the wire, infiltrating cartels, organized crime organizations, and taking them out from the inside out. So after 20 years, he was up here in Washington State visiting family, popped in to see me, and found out that I had turned my life around almost 17 or over 17 of those 20 years. So now today we have a pretty good relationship. We keep in touch. I think that he accepts that I am no longer the person that I used to be. And as you know, when I was in federal prison, I started seminary. I did my postgraduate studies when I got out, received my doctorate in 2004, and still to this day work in a pastoral relationship. And now certified chaplaincy I acquired in 2018. So I'm not just a pastor, I'm a hospice chaplain. And I've been doing hospice for 26 years this year. So it just goes to show that we can go through extreme events in our stages of life, but there comes a point of accepting it. And once you can accept it, then you can change it. And I don't want to get too much further into it. Someday I'll be on your show and we'll get into it deep. But Michael, what I love about your story was no matter what you were going through and what you saw in the family that was corruptible, if you will, with regard to having that normal mother and father loving one another, raising their children under that kind of an example of love, you could turn to your siblings, to yourself. And as I understand it, you even started mediating with people in school and throughout your life. You've taken what you experienced and you've turned it into a humanitarian scale. And I'd like to talk about that today.
Sure. Yes. I definitely became the peacemaker.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I had this ability to be friends with either individuals that couldn't get along or groups of students that couldn't get along. And there I was, just kind of like this salmon flowing upstream, as you do when you're a salmon, and not being bothered by the animosity from one side or the other. But I just had this ability to, I guess, connect on a personal level, perhaps, and see beyond see beyond the deficiencies that cause someone to be the pariah or the aggressor.
Do you think that had you had a different childhood that you'd be doing this work today, or do you think that that was the basic foundation of bringing people together in a humanitarian
Oh,
basis?
yes. Yeah. If I wouldn't have had that upbringing as a child, I wouldn't be doing what I am today. Guaranteed.
Exactly.
And I wouldn't have the personality that I do today.
Yeah, your neurolinguistics right now speak very profoundly on that. Your demeanor is very calm. It's an assured demeanor, the style, the way you carry yourself. It's in my 17 years as an operator and my 15 years in the cartels, I had to learn how to read people just to stay alive. So
Yeah.
when I see somebody like you, Michael, it doesn't take but a few moments to see the reality of just exactly who you are. And I detect your calmness. And I can see that as an influencing factor, bringing people to the table where they're willing to listen to someone that isn't acting out of emotion off their sleeve.
Yeah.
You're equating and relating to what you observe going on with that indifference, if you will, between the people that you're involving yourself with.
Oh yeah, that's great insight. I really appreciate that. It makes me think of, I had to do this political presentation several years ago, we'll say.
Uh-huh.
And one of the guys that I was working closely with, former British military guy, we'd become good friends. And he said, well, let's just, off the cuff. And I was like, no, that does not exist in my world.
No,
I have to prepare. I have to be prepared. I can't fail. And so it was just interesting what you're saying, and then me thinking back and saying, oh yeah, this lights quite a few light bulbs from the past of how I am, and probably why I excelled as a television producer. Yeah,
that's fine. I had no idea about that. Can you go into that a little bit?
Oh yes. Well, I love television. It was probably one of the escapes that I had as a child. My parents were constantly tearing me away from those 2 or 3 channels that you have in a rural setting. And and so I love television, and there was a few other things I wanted to do in life, but the doors kept closing. And so the one that was always open to me was working in television. And then right after high school, even before college, so my gap year, as they call it now, I got into this community station. I told them I wanted to learn how to be a producer and be talented in front of the camera. And I loved the ability to organize and to write scripts and to, I would tell people, we don't have to just account for every second of airtime. We have 30 frames per second that we have to account for. And so I loved being able to write those scripts and time things out, and kind of then eventually you realize that you become a gatekeeper of what people see.
That's amazing. I had no idea. You are aware, of course, that I've got 2 movie producers working on my life story.
Oh, is that right?
Absolutely. Wow, okay. Yeah. And their screenplay writers have been brought in. And over the last 5 years of working on this, we're right at the point now to where we have the package almost ready to go out the door to get the investors involved and get it going. But we have documented my life since my childhood years. Wow. And to have a man that has survived so much and been through so much and turned it into a crisis victor by serving the community. It's just absolutely amazing. So I'm really fascinated by that. Over these last years, I've met and learned and become evolved on the side scale of all this as they're starting to get ready to produce my life story in a motion picture form and later a TV series. So I'm the author of 12 books, and 11 of the books that I've written are action adventure novels that I always dedicate to law enforcement, military people that I worked with and served with. And the books are fictionalized, of course, but what they do is they bring the realities of the transformation of being in the drug cartels and becoming an enemy of the cartels and surviving that lifestyle. So it's just amazing that you have that background. How funny.
Well, I also I wouldn't want to go any further without giving a little bit of praise to the my Lord and Savior.
Absolutely,
certainly. The one thing that my parents made sure is that we were in church. If there was a Sunday, there was a church service. Amen. So I'm very thankful for that discipline, and that really became an anchor for me in those younger years that I was able to take with me through as I grew. So it's I'd be nothing without, of course, my relationship with God and my experience in
Absolutely.
church. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's kind of like you could say I was born on a Thursday and I was in church on Sunday.
I love that.
Yeah.
Mine came October 19th, 1994 at
Hmm.
3:30 in the afternoon. I had just come out of a federal court, sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. And my wife served me divorce papers the day before. And I had $100,000 contract out on my head, and I knew I was heading into prison. And I
Wow.
remember getting to my holding cell while I was waiting for the Conair flight to take me back east. And I fell on my knees and I just said, Lord, if you're there, I can't take another bit of this. I just can't do it any further. And an inmate walked into my cell, knelt down on one side of me, put a hand on my shoulder and started praying. Within seconds, another one came in on the other side of me, put a hand on my other shoulder and started praying. And within those next moments, I felt all of the chains of aggression and anger and fear all shattered. And from that moment on, as soon as I hit the prison system, I plugged into Bible studies. I plugged into an assemblage where I could get myself ordained while in prison. And my job in federal prison was I became a certified hospice counselor, taking 24 of my fellow prisoners through the dying process. But Michael, what's interesting about that was during that 2.5 years, instead of sitting in a classroom at seminary, I was sitting in these death rooms watching men die. And that's where I crammed and did my studies. So I knew in that instant God had a specific purpose to convert a man who had been so evil and had lived such a dangerous environment and even helped create danger in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
And to become instantly like Saul on the road to Damascus, how he was struck down by God himself and became Paul.
Yeah.
And that's how I relate my ministry to. And I have never wavered my faith from that moment of October 19th, because I knew something had happened to me special. So I love hearing that about you, Michael, about your love for Jesus, your love for and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the most intense passion that there is.
There isn't. Yes, right.
And I feel it in you, brother. I'm looking at you right now, and I'm sitting there going, "Yeah, that's my brother. You are my brother."
Absolutely.
We're blessed. We're very blessed.
Are. Yeah, and I will say one of my most favorite things I've been able to do in life is the 2.5 years where I was a chaplain, volunteer chaplain with Corrections Canada, and we were at a prison where there was only lifers, and so what a life-changing experience that was.
I've been in that environment. I was in Folsom Prison in the 80s and Leavenworth Federal Prison in the 90s, so I get it, bro. That's pretty intense for someone that hasn't walked in that kind of a yard before, to go in there as a chaplain's assistant and to be exposed to that. How did you deal with that?
Well, there was a company that I worked for, and one of the more difficult, scary, I could say scary, prisons that was on our clientele list was the Edmonton Max in Edmonton, Alberta. And that you could, once you entered the prison grounds, they would have the stores like away from the prison gates. They would have certain areas, and they had a machine shop, and they did oil field parts in the machine shop in the prison. But when you entered that ground, you could just sense this negative, almost evil spirit as you drove on some very unpleasant places. And so the place that I was at was where lifers could go for good behavior, or people that weren't going to make it in the system would go to the federal prison that I was being a volunteer chaplain at. And I met one of the guards that I got to know. He said, "I'm just here for my, leading up to my retirement. My whole career was at Edmonton Max." And so he and I exchanged notes on that place. And there's probably a few other Canadian prisons that have worse offenders than Edmonton Max. But back in the day, it had that reputation for being a place where angels didn't fear to tread, but you could get the feeling that you were getting close to that tipping point.
Yeah, I understand that feeling completely, Michael. Been there, done that on the other side.
Yeah, right. And that's one of the things too that I often thought about was, boy, if I'm driving here in my delivery truck, what would you feel like if you're coming in on the bus knowing that you're stuck in this place and you have to survive? Oh, yeah.
It's absolutely indescribable unless you've stepped off a bus in a Sally Port and you look to that upper window up there and you see a clerk pointing certain people out in the line, and those are sex offenders or snitches or people like that. And in Folsom Prison in the 1980s, it was a very radicalized prison, very dangerous. Every moment of your life was in peril outside of the cell you stepped out of. Going to chow, you could get killed, and you didn't have to do anything. All you had to do was be white or black or Mexican or Asian. Prison, as you know, you've worked in them, everything is racially segregated in those environments. So like say somebody hits a member of the BGF family, Black Gorilla family, and it's a white guy that did it. Well, sometimes what they'll do if they don't know the guy that did it is they'll just say, well, hit a white guy. And that's that life in there. So you live on the edge every day that you're in there, regardless of your status. And you have to realize, Michael, when I was in Folsom, I went in with a really rock solid jacket. I was a known international smuggler for the Sinaloa drug cartel. When I hit that prison, when I got to my cell that night, there was a carton of cigarettes and summer sausage laying on my bed, nothing but respect. I was approached by the Peckerwoods, which I have tattooed on my chest, NorCal Woods, and they're saying, what the hell is this relationship you got with these Mexican guys? And one of the Mexican shot callers in the yard came up to him and said, hey, this is who he is to us. And right there, it made me a mediator like you between two powerful crime families. And that's how I did my time when I was in Folsom Prison. But you know, you always have a set of eyes in the back of your head. And that was before I had seen Jesus. That's before my deliverance. That didn't come until 1993 or 1994, excuse me. When I fell to my knees in that cell that night. And I felt the instant conversion. And how do you argue something like that, Michael? How can you defend against something that inside of your core essence transforms you in a blink of an eye? I mean, instantly. Everything that had been evil about me, everything I had done to other people, I had survived myself, everything that I had gone through, none of that mattered. Instantaneously, it melted away. The only thing that mattered, and I'm doing it here 30 years later, is serving God, serving his kingdom. And that's something else I want to talk about real quick, Michael. Next month is the Feast of the Trumpets, and what's going on September 22nd. They're going to be bringing it's to God, what is it called? Well, it was May 14th, 1948. The United Nations. That's when Israel was born again on the 14th of May, 1948. 2 years after the foundation of the organization. Now I hear that on the 20th of September, they're bringing up Palestine to become a statehood. Now, the 22nd. Well, and you know, the 23rd is the Feast of Trumpets. And that is supposed to happen at the time of the rapture. Now, you know, we don't want to get too deep into that. Because the thing you have to be careful with is, as much as we both know and study and love scripture, it's some people try to put times and dates on certain things, which I think is to a degree significant. But what happens if something doesn't happen on that day? It creates a great falling away. It's a Thessalonican proverb. There's a falling. So we have to be careful how we approach those subjects. But what I find interesting, Michael, is just a couple of weeks ago, they sacrificed a red heifer to prepare for the third temple. And the stones for the third temple have already been set. And they've already got all of the required articles that will be entering into the third temple already built, established, and ready to go into the building. Now, when they did the red heifer a few weeks ago, they said that was a test. We all know that the sacrificing of the red heifer is to take the ashes of the heifer to cleanse, purify the new temple as it's founded and opened. But they're talking now about actually burning that red heifer. Now, they had two of them they got, and the one they did the test with, but now they're getting ready. It could happen any day. So I think for people like us that are really in the Lord, do you not feel an acceleration in the Holy Spirit within you?
An excitement for sure, but one of the things that I love is dates and numbers, and I didn't know about the 22nd and the 23rd, but I have something that I wrote in my calendar back in May 2021. I was listening to a podcast with Richard Serrett and Thomas Horn, and he was talking about wormwood hitting the earth on April the 13th, 2029.
Yes.
And so I counted back 3 years and 6 months from April 13th, 2029. And that is during the Jewish Feast of Tabernacles, October 6th to 13th in 2025.
Yes. I've read that.
So
Yeah.
it does seem like things are kind of lining up. And like what you were saying about the falling away, I always think that's because people worship the dates and not the date giver.
That's why I made that comment. We have to be so careful. But brother, talking about a Palestinian statehood at the United Nations on the 22nd of September, that's huge, because it says when the treaty is drawn between Israel and Palestine, that is also the gateway to the era of tribulation, the 7-year tribulation.
Yeah.
So we don't exactly. And in Matthew 24, the Olivet Discourse, it talks about the signs of coming and all of these things and the increase of knowledge that's discussed in Revelations. And look at AI. Look at AI. Look what it's doing. Look at all the deceit and misinformation and all of this information, if you will, that's coming exponentially upon the world.
Yes. And, well, sorry, go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
No, okay. Michael, that's fine. Please.
This is good. So in scripture, it talks about that people will worship the image of the beast.
Yes.
And I was always been very curious to me about the image. And now, of course, we live in a world of images. Now we know. Do. And so the other thing that I was getting into in my own personal study was the verse in the Bible that talks about vain imaginations. And I thought, well, I wonder what that word vain means. And it turns out it's the same word where it says, don't take the name of the Lord your God in vain. And so what that is a non-working image, or taking, not putting the name of God to work in your life. Yes. And so then when we think of these powerful images, and AI is creating images and they're getting more realistic,
it's amazing.
We can have musicians on stage that are not even real. That we could use just a few websites. It wouldn't even cost us that much money to get these subscriptions, and we could start like that old movie where they had the android Simone or Sim 1, and have this fake individual that everyone thinks is real.
Well, and look what else it's created, Michael. Look at the division, not only in the United States of America, but now how the rest of the world is looking at the United States of America. The progression, if you will, of the politicizing of our economies all the way to the foundations of our faith. I understand, and I've been following it scantily, I have to admit, not very much lately, but a new Christian order is actually being formed and founded. And if you remember in scripture where we had learned about a one world religion, one world monetary system, a cashless society, man, brother, these things are coming into play right now.
Yes.
But the real sign, and like the drying up of the Euphrates River, I have a very dear brother of mine who said, well, I saw pictures of it and the river looks full. But what they didn't show him was the drone footage where up the river miles ahead, the river's dry. I mean, and that has to open up the Valley of Megiddo for the World War III to begin. And I believe truly that we're right on the cusp of that. Look what's going on with Iran. Look what's going on right now with Israel and the attack on Israel, and how so many people are hateful towards Israel right now. And although I must confess it bothers me tremendously, the attack on Gaza and all of that, I understand going after Hamas. I'm an old veteran. Of course, I believe in defending those that are righteous, but I do have some problems with some of these on the hospitals and schools and starvation, all of the starvation going on there right now, and people not being allowed to access that to take care of them. But one thing that sticks with me is it says those that stand with Israel are blessed, and those that are against Israel are cursed.
Yes.
So what do? We have to separate, in my opinion, we have to separate a few politicians, a few aggressive people in Israel, and not judge all of Israel. because it is such a magnificently beautiful country. It really, truly is. And, if you take a look at what's happened since the great returning of Israel, May 14th, 1948, all of the Jews that returned back to the land. And now it's like paradise there. It's so beautiful. And, but how do we deal with the conflict between Gaza, Palestine, and Israel right now? Well, I think we deal with it in the United Nations on September 22nd, because I think if it acquires a statehood, then it can also become a part of NATO. It can have other protections coming in. And I also think that Iran is hitting right now for specific diversionary purpose. I think that we're going to see more direction going that way. There's a lot of stuff going on with Russia and Iran, Gog and Magog. We see the foundation of their contracts and their agreements and their relationship strengthening. All of these things, and China, let's not forget China and their play. And all of this right now, brother, is coming into play at a precise time.
Yeah, it feels like things are getting ready to kick off. And it does feel like there's so many things that have lined up like never before in human history. And if we, I was having a chat with a friend of mine. He said, I don't want to get too esoteric. And I said to him, no, we actually need to see things on a spiritual level and know that the physical is not the first one. It's always that spiritual side. That's the incubator and the impetus and the push to initiate something into the physical realm. And so we can do that for good, or we can do that for evil. And as you were talking in this little bit, I was thinking about we have the kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness, but Jesus was very clear that he came to give abundant life, and there's only one other option, and it's stealing, killing, and destroying. And I would say, my friend, my brother in the Lord, that you're a perfect example of the transition from one kingdom into the other.
I thank you for that. And I give God the glory, not me. That belongs to him, because I know the moment of my conversion, the instant. And like I say, in my mind's eye, and I can't wait to meet Paul someday and talk to him about this, because I know what it felt like on that road to Damascus when I was struck down and the scales were put on my eyes, and they took him to the house of Ananias, and Ananias was in fear of Saul because he was rounding up Christians for the lions to feed on, in a festive way. But they brought him in, but he had faith, and Ananias knew when he lifted the scales off the eyes of Saul that the conversion was instant, and Paul arose.
Yes.
Think of that.
I often have thought of Ananias and the man that he must have been to get that mission from the Lord.
Yeah.
And how the Lord was like, who am I going to choose to deal with this former reprobate that I'm going to put scales on his eyes? And here he finds Ananias, who's maybe he was like, here I am, Lord, send me. I'll be bold. I'll be bold as those lions that I might get fed to.
Yeah. Yeah, he did, didn't he? Well, there's a certain courage that comes when you become faith-based that comes from the Spirit. In the book of Acts, it talks about, in the very final days, I will put my Spirit upon the flesh of the world. Yeah. This is that deciding moment. This is that time. But that also plays into the Thessalonican proverb where it talks about the great falling away. Yeah. Because now people will question. This, brother, is where AI is coming in. There's so much misinformation out there. And there's a lot of religious misinformation out there right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's absolutely amazing that we are blessed to live in these exact days.
Oh, yes. Well, and even that I'll say ministry in air quotes that got busted in Michigan and Houston for stealing people's money and slaves and diabolical stuff. And yet they show the clips of worship services, and you just think, no, man, there's like that guy's countenance is off. But yet
what did the prophets tell us? To rejoice and be exceeding glad, for so persecuted they the prophets which came before you and me, Michael.
Yeah,
they were persecuted and they stood there in joy, literally thanking them that were torturing them.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I was captured in El Salvador. I was a prisoner down there, moving with an agent captured with me. He had been uncovered, and every day we knew we were going to be executed. And it was 7 weeks before a team got in there and rescued us. and they killed everybody in there that held us, and we were the only 2 prisoners being moved. But I can remember every single day that confidence if this is the day, if this is the day, I know that I'm received. And it was an absolute calmness of peace to me, if you will, in the greatest tragedy of my life. Yeah. And here it is decades later, and I still carry physical suffrage from daily torture. But the one thing that I don't carry is any anger or animosity. And another one, Michael, I'll give you, was in the night of June 6th, June 7th of 2020, around the midnight hour, I got a guy knocked on my door here at my house, and I go to the door, and I have a security gate because I had just come out of working for 17 years. Yeah. And there's a tow truck driver there with the tow truck uniform, the hat with the logo, everything was perfect. And he was a Caucasian. And he says, do you own that yellow Corvette Stingray out back here of this house? And I said, yes, I do. He said, well, I'm a tow driver. I was pulling a car out and I accidentally hit your car. Can you come down and look at it? Oh. And I wasn't thinking at all. And 10 years earlier, I would have never fallen for it. But I went down the stairs, and he says, well, look at the back of the car. If you drop down, you can see by your gas tank. And as soon as my knee hit the pavement, I knew I was getting hit. Anyway, this guy hit me, and it's multiple stabbings. I mean, he really did a number on me. And as I was laying there, I recognized that I was dying. I knew I went limp in his arms, and he let go of me at that point because he believed it to himself, like I did, that he had delivered the death blow. And as I'm sitting there and I'm fading out, the last part of my consciousness was absolute joy, love, peace, contentment. I knew I was going home to be at the Lord. And all of this passed away. The former things do pass away, Michael. They leave us. Yeah. And something greater comes in, and it gave me a love, surrounded me that I cannot even put into words. I knew I was in the hands of God. And then miraculously, I don't know how much longer later, I came out of my darkness. Yeah. And one of my tenants came, and they 911'd in, got my son down, and they were putting me, and I kept telling the police and the ambulance, I said, this was a cartel kill order. I just got hit. That's what this is. I'm going to need protection, security when you get me to wherever we're going. And when I got to the hospital, the forensic nurse was talking, and I let them know. But the thing was, Michael, I don't think they took it to heart or whatever. I mean, I don't get their play, but I was put in a medically induced coma for a day and a half. And when I came out of it, Michael, the first thing that came to me was to share love and compassion and forgiveness to the man that was sent to kill me. Wow. That was my first awakening thought. And brother, God gives us confirmation throughout periods of our life in this journey. Well, tell me if that couldn't be a greater confirmation than to go, brother, I forgive you. I was nothing but a name on a piece of paper, a name and an address. I get it. I've been there. I've lived that life, but I never lived a life of forgiveness so instantly and so readily and so happily. And it was a miracle. It was a miracle. And as we get on your show, we'll talk about the hospice work that I did when I was in federal prison, and I was put on the front page of a newspaper. I'll send you the clip. Okay. And I was laying hands on one of my hospice patients who was in the dying process. They figured he had less than a week left, full-blown AIDS. Wow. And I picked him up and carried him to the chapel. We covered him in holy oil, and 7 months later, he walked out of that prison without AIDS. Without AIDS. Wow. No AIDS, none in his blood at all. And he was from Boston, and his mother kept in touch with me for a few years. But you know what happened? God gave him that life back, and he went out there, started shooting drugs, contracted HIV, and a few years later died of AIDS. Wow. But he was the messenger of God and his healing. Yes. Jehovah Rapha appeared to him that day in that cell. Well, I've got the whole story, the newspaper story. I will send that to you, Michael. Yeah. It was a true miracle. And he gives us these things because we should never question him. Never question. But sometimes he just gives us things, like that night that I was laying out there dying and knew within seconds my life was over, and how full of joy I became. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's a supernatural feeling that came into play of love embracing me. And then I just went dark, but I just wanted to share that because I think that's a great word. And that's him. Yes. That is him.
Yes.
And and before we close out the show and we talk about your show,
Yes.
I want to bring to attention that on the night of August 4th at 2:00 in the morning of this year, I got woken up out of a dead sleep, given a prophetic message to go to Kenya and serve in Kenya. And this just happened. This is like
Wow.
2 weeks ago. Well, what was interesting, I put together a GoFundMe thing online for Pete Turner's going to go with me, and we're going to do a documentary. And I'm trying to raise the cash now to do this. But what was significant was over the next few days, Michael, I was getting messages from all kinds of people saying, wow, I know somebody that had that exact same experience, but a different message. And over the course of a week after August 4th, I had multiple messages coming in from people that said that at that time that happened to you, it was happening to other people.
Wow.
So go figure, brother. I think there's a preparation coming.
That's exciting.
It's very exciting. It's amazing, but I don't question it. I believe it.
Yes. And we can always completely trust the Lord. He's not like a human. He's not like someone we have. Is he lying to me? Let's check his body language. It's not like that. It's all the promises of God are yes and amen. And sometimes the Lord, in his tender mercies, he comes in and reminds us, you can just trust me. Trust me. Don't trust the people that you send invoices to and you hope to get paid, or don't trust these relationships that don't put your trust in the man or the woman. Put your
Proverbs
trust in
3,
me.
5, and 6.
Yes.
Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, and all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. Amen.
Yes.
Well, listen, we're getting ready to close up the show here. So, Michael, I want to say to you, I love you. God bless you.
Thank you.
I'm grateful that you came on and shared your humanitarian alternative to crisis victory. I think that's remarkable. As a child going through parents that are not in agreement, we'll put it politely that way.
That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah, but what it did was it infused you with a calling of your own.
Yes.
And no matter what they were doing and what they were going through in their marriage relationship, they brought you into the Lord early on in life.
That's right.
So good things come from crazy things, doesn't it?
They sure do. And there's that one question that get asked a lot. Oh, if you could go back and tell your 12-year-old self X, Y, and Z. And I would say, no, he's got to figure it out for himself.
That's a very good answer, because that's what manifests the wisdom of our later years of life.
Yes.
Well, listen, Michael, God bless you. Looking forward to coming on your show.
100%.
You're amazing. And let's just keep serving God and giving him the glory.
Oh, yes. 100%.
Take care, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, folks. Well, that wraps up another episode today. And I'd like to take this moment to thank each and every one of you for taking your time to catch our show. Now, if you like these shows, I would ask that you would please hit like, share, and subscribe. It's so important to us that we get these messages out, and we understand that these are graphic, almost toxic interviews. But, this is the kind of impact that we feel is needed in order to make sure that people understand the significance of the problems that we are confronted within our own country and around the globe. So I'm going to say at this time that I love you all. God bless you all. Hasta luego, y vaya con Dios, and go Victor.